Thank you so much for making the time, taking the time to listen in, whether it's on the podcast, the Backfire podcast with Jeff Fuller of Jay Fuller Interviews, or on YouTube, Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter, Jay Fuller Interviews. I believe people's stories make our stories much better if we take the time to listen to their stories, unlearn what we thought was right, to relearn what is right. And one with a great story is Hank Taylor, or should I say Tank Haler on Instagram and Twitter. How are you, Hank?
Thanks for having me, man. I'm good, man. I'm good. I'm blessed. Things are good over here.
So you seem like a decent dude. We just really met online right now, although we've been Facebook friends for a little bit, thanks to Mark
Yeah,
King.
literally like 5 minutes ago.
But I was sharing off here that my friends in college, they used to call me Fef Juller. And so when I saw your Twitter and Instagram handles, it really made me laugh. But Hank, you're down in Florida. Where did you grow
Yep.
up?
So if you know Central Florida geography at all,
No.
you know Orlando,
Okay.
obviously, right in the middle, right in the middle of Central Florida. So I grew up in a town that's called DeLand. It's sort of in between Daytona Beach and Orlando on the I-4 corridor. So that's where I grew up. That was where I had childhood. That was where, we did all of that. All of that, and I love that area still, and live close by there now. But went to school in Lakeland, which is the opposite end of the I-4 corridor. It's
Okay.
in between Orlando and Tampa, and then now I'm in Sanford, which is a little bit more closer to Orlando, but back on the Daytona Beach side. So that's kind of where I'm at.
Hank, talk to me about your parents, siblings. How did you grow up? What type of family structure did you have?
I had a mom, dad, two younger brothers. Both of them are Air Force. They're officers in the Air Force. So I'm the one that's a little bit of an oddball. I'm working in pro sports and as a pastor. But we grew up together there. My dad, he's passed now, but he worked in finance in the medical industry. So we traveled around a lot as a kid. But when his mom passed, it was important to him that we be closer to his family, which is in the Deland area. So that was when we, sort of moved and kind of settled, put our roots there. That was when I was in elementary school, still pretty young. So, but yeah, we loved being there. Both my brothers, we have, a great relationship, all of us, and they're stationed in South Carolina, not too far, about 6 hours from my mom and I. My mom's still in DeLand, so we get a chance to see them every so often.
So, Hank, another quick shout out to Mark King, Florida Basketball Association. How did you
Coach
first meet
King.
Mark?
I met him just you already know this, your listeners might not, but I have been public address announcing in sports since I was in high school. It was how I got my start was in my first day of my freshman year of high school. So when I decided that was something that I was going to pursue and keep doing, got to Lakeland, continued to do it, continued to grow, and just trying to network. Met Coach King. He's a great guy and runs the FBA, which is semi-pro here in Central Florida, and they are an awesome organization. So I've done some stuff for them. I've done some announcing. I've done some commentating. I've done a little bit of everything for them over the years, and he's been just an awesome supporter of me and every step that I've gotten to take in my career. I've been very blessed to have a lot of success, and he's always there, cheering me on and supporting me. So he's a great guy. Love that guy.
So, share with me if you would, and we might lose listeners, viewers, but that's okay. I've been listening a lot about tribute to Rush Limbaugh and how he got his start, and his story to me is fascinating, and how he just was calling games and speaking on the radio when he was, a boy. For you, did you try to like shut off the TV and do play by play, or you said you started in high school? Where did you get to start? Was it just a high school sports team, or where did that love come from?
I was always into like performing and did theater a lot as a kid. Um, and then never really put two and two together that there was any sort of correlation between just like, and I've been very comfortable public speaking always. Um, then when I got to high school, I knew my first day, I knew sort of the direction I wanted to go was into um, theater, but also a little bit of like production and a TV. I love TV, so I took a TV production class. That first day of school in TV production class, we were doing this exercise where we were sort of doing like a general overview. We were blessed. We had an awesome studio, like black box, like TV studio space, a whole control room, all that. So we were sort of doing an overview of everything, and we did this part where we would go stand in front of the camera on the green screen, and they had a teleprompter, so they would put a little script in there. We would read it, just to sort of, again, get a little bit of a taste for everything on the first day. But the teacher, Coach Lowenstein, kept me after and said, you have a really great speaking voice, like for someone your age. I was like 13, 14 years old. And he was like, you like have a lot of talent in this. And I was like, well, thanks. And he was like, have you ever thought about announcing before?
Wow.
And I was like, no, hadn't really ever thought about it. And he was like, great loud booming voice when you go to a sporting event or go, to a show or whatever. And I was like, yeah, that would be awesome. And he was like, well, how about this? Come back here during lunch. We'll walk down together to the athletic director's office. We'll have a conversation with them about maybe to have you do some work. Do you need a job? And I was like, yeah, I'm looking for a job. So yeah, we went back at lunch, walked down to the athletic director's office, met with them, and they were like, okay, cool. So we're interested in having you announce for us. We were having a volleyball game today after school. Can you stick around today after school? And I was like, sure. I mean, I was just like all in. Yeah. So then I had to call my mom after school or during school and say, hey, so you don't need to come pick me up. And she, of course I was like, gotten in huge trouble. And I was like, no, I got a job. Like even like the polar opposite, way better. Got a job. And just got started doing that. I mean, my actual first day in high school, we jumped right into it.
That's awesome. Now, for you, did you enjoy sports as far as playing, or did you always want to be more on the other side of the mic or the camera?
I did play sports. I played soccer. I wrestled throughout high school, so I would announce our own wrestling meets. So I would always introduce myself last, so that I could run out and beat, and then do our handshake, and then we do our wrestling meet. But I loved competing. I loved getting a chance to play sports. I did track and field for a little bit. I did wrestling, but I always knew that I had a gifting in the performing aspect of it. So. Sure. There are a lot of people that were a whole lot more talented than me, and I knew that. So I loved getting a chance to compete and be part of the team environment. But yeah, I just loved getting a chance to go and do that kind of stuff for fun.
Now, I had an opportunity to interview Ben DeCastro. He does the public address for, well, it used to be the Paw Sox. It's the Boston Red Sox AAA affiliate. Now they're in Worcester, the Woo Sox. And he says he's like an anchor man. So whatever's on teleprompter, whatever's on screen, he's just going to read it. And it could have something to do with baseball, or it couldn't. He doesn't know the difference. He just reads what's there. For you, when you don't have time to proofread what you're about to say, does that make you nervous?
No, it really doesn't. Down working with Lakeland, working with the Magic, that's all very fast paced, and we get a chance to review a lot of that stuff ahead of time. But even then, it's always changing. They use a cloud based service. It's called ShowFlow, where they can sort of update all that stuff on the fly. So I'm used to all that stuff changing, literally as I'm reading it right in front of my eyes, seeing updates come through and things getting added. So getting a chance to just be flexible. I think I like to think that my experience in TV led me to just be very aware of the words that are in front of me, and not just say whatever, but also have a little bit of discernment about it too.
Really good. And we have Hank Taylor. It's Tank Haler on Instagram and Twitter, just joining us. And you are the public address announcer for the Lakeland Magic, the 2021 G League champion Lakeland Magic. For you, what has this season been like for you, and to have everything culminate in a championship?
Well, this season was unlike any other in the G League, similar to the NBA playoffs that happened just before it. This whole entire season was in a bubble here in Orlando. So not even all the teams participated. There were some that opted out for the season. So they had, I think it was 22 teams down in Orlando for a little over a month doing the whole entire season. They played a 15-game season and then a very abbreviated single elimination playoff. And it was awesome. I got a chance to actually announce all of their games that were considered home. I mean, no one's home in the bubble, but all the games that were branded and considered home for them, I had a chance to be there and announce those games. So kept my active streak of home games for them going. But yeah, it was awesome to be able to see that season up close. First of all, just to be a part of the bubble environment in and of itself was really cool. They did a great job down at ESPN Wide World of Sports there at Disney. And they really did a great job putting that season together. Super safe, super comfortable. A lot of people stayed on site, but because I was so local, I didn't have to. I was able to drive in and do COVID tests, which was great. And still be able to work at my full-time job and do, those games on the side. So all of that was great. Getting a chance to do that, getting to see them play in person was awesome. Getting a chance to contribute, what I can contribute to that was great. And then, they started off. They got hot at the right time, right there at the end of that 15-game stretch. Really started to put together some impressive wins, and then shot lights out during the playoffs from three from deep. Broke a couple of G League records actually in one of their games for threes in a quarter, threes and a half, threes in a game, all in the playoffs. So it was really, really cool to be able to see that up close, be a part of putting that season together. And we're looking forward to hopefully things getting a little bit more back to normal in the next G League season.
Yeah, for sure. And Hank, thanks again for joining us today. But the Lakeland Magic, part of the NBA G League, and there's something that I've heard about, and just being a sports fan, you wonder about. These players, they don't want to stay in the G League. They want to go to the NBA or perhaps overseas where they can make more money. So seeing a roster that changes year to year or even throughout the year, how hard is that for you? And with that, what's the most difficult name you had to announce or pronounce during your time with Lakeland?
That's a great question. It is really interesting. It's sort of like a great blend of like the college atmosphere and the pro atmosphere, where you have this sort of evolving roster all the time. NBA recently introduced the two-way contracts and the two-way players, so you get a chance to see, those guys, but then they can get pulled and called based on an injury or whatever at the NBA level and get sort of reworked and reassigned. I don't envy those coaches and those front office guys, I'll tell you that, because they are always having to, keep those things in mind. And, they're having things maybe even outside of their control dictate the lineups that they've got to put out onto the floor. So those guys definitely have a difficult job. But the G League has just been awesome. It's cool to be able to see those stories, those guys that are working really hard, trying to earn their way into the NBA. You see a lot of these guys that are in sort of a development stage, like they've got, a really good game in one aspect, but are really trying to work on this other aspect of their game to become more well-rounded and become more attractive to an NBA club. So to get the chance to see those guys work as hard as they do, play as hard as they do, get out there and try to prove themselves, it is really awesome. Many great stories, and you hear, statistics about, the number of players in this year's playoffs, really high percentage, over 50%, have G League experience and come through that environment. So it shows that it's working, shows that it's really giving these guys an opportunity, and it's providing value to these clubs who are looking to try to, get deeper and better, getting a chance to have those teams and be able to observe and watch these guys in an up close environment really helps them, helps the league. It helps everybody, and it helps people like us too, who are also developing. The G League is a developmental league, even for the staff, the office people, the other people who work, and even roles like mine. We're people who are developing and growing and trying to take that next step too. So it really is just an awesome environment. So many great people are part of the G League, and it's an awesome organization for sure.
And being part of a championship team, it doesn't matter what level you're part of a championship team. So I have to ask, how often do you wear that championship swag? Do people at church grow tired of it, knowing that you're part of that team?
I wish I had the shirt on today. Actually, that would have been great. But I do wear it a lot. It's heavy in my rotation. We'll put it that way. Heavy in my rotation for sure.
So I want to talk a little bit about your job at the foundryc.org, and that's the Foundry Church. And for me, most of the listeners know, the viewers know that I'm a pastor full time, and I find it a unique place to be, especially during this time of so much uncertainty. For you, how have you been able to connect the hope of what we'd say God gives through the Bible with what's taking place every day with so much disconnection from hope to people's seeming reality of just struggle, especially during this past 14 months?
Yeah, I mean, this whole COVID thing really caught churches off guard. And we were very fortunate that we had, a lot of the infrastructure already in place to be able to take what we do, our services, and some of our experiences, take all of that online. So initially right away, I remember that last Sunday that we had before, we essentially, said we're not having any sort of in-person attendance or, in-person seating at all. I remember that last Sunday standing there in the back of the room and just being like, this is really going to be it, this is going to really look different, next
Right,
week and,
right.
in the months to come. And then, yeah, we went down to like a skeleton crew for us as far as took our services totally online. We Some of us were still showing up here at the building to make sure that things could happen, but we went 100% online for several months, and it wasn't
Yeah,
until the fall that we started to have any sort of people come back to view that stuff
right, right.
in person and online, or in person at rather. So yeah, it has been tough, but we have really we've really been blessed. We've been able to, I think, expand our reach. We've been able to continue to serve those people that we that are in our community. We're about 500 to 600 people, so we've been able to continue to serve those folks. We've been able to expand that and reach so many more. um and for us, it's about showing people that 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 we still have that hope, that we still have that hope for what it's going to look like when we get back together. And for us, we've started to do some of that here in Central Florida. We have um a lot of the restrictions are gone as far as doing things outside. We had a block party last weekend that was all outside, so we were able to gather people together and feel like we were able to do that safely with some distance seating and all that. But it's been a challenging couple of months, but we have really tried to enforce to our people, whether you feel that you can be here or whether you feel like you're safest because you're thinking about someone in your house or you're thinking about somebody in your family and you don't want to expose yourself, whatever your situation is, that's all right. Like, we don't want to try to send a message of, oh, like, you need to be here, it's better if
Right,
you're
right.
here. Like, that's not us. We want to be able to say, like, hey, wherever it is that you're at, whatever you feel like your situation is, that best for yourself, and we want to create an experience that's going to be welcoming, inviting to anybody, no matter where they're at, as far as concerns about health, concerns about their family, concerns about whatever. We want to try to make an accessible experience to anybody, regardless of where they're at.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. And I think it's so important that, well, as Christians, we try to be like Jesus, and Jesus was for people. So the more that we are for people instead of an organization or institution, we'll see great things happen. This is a goofy, silly, probably even stupid question, but it is something I've thought of and something I would be curious about. I have your staff page up now. If
Okay.
you were going to introduce them on a Sunday morning like you introduced the Lakeland Magic, who would you like to introduce most? That they would take it well, or they'd be embarrassed the most? Is there somebody that you just think their name would be fun? How would that go?
That's a great question. That's a great question. Well, Seth, our lead pastor, he, I think, would um he can be a little bit of a ham when he needs to. He's very introverted, so I think initially it would be uncomfortable, but he would play into it really well. Um, Patty also comes to mind. She's just um, she's very boisterous and a big personality, so she definitely could play into that really well too. But Mitchell, a good friend of mine as well, he would he very competitive, very athletic. He would absolutely love that too. So
So would
um,
you
all
understate
kinds of
his
choices.
so would you have to understate his introduction just to drive him nuts that everybody else got a loud boisterous one, and for him you just go like Mitchell Dome? How would that go?
That would be funny. Yeah, that would definitely throw him for a loop the hardest, and it would be the best reaction, definitely. So
Hey, so question for you, being part of the Lakeland Magic in a team atmosphere, being a part of a church staff with multiple staff, what are the similarities as far as chemistry on a team, but also being accountable, being held accountable? Um, what are the similarities, the benefits from a basketball team, but also a church staff?
that's a great question. I definitely see a lot of similarities in both of these jobs, and I think they both speak to each other really well in my life, and I really appreciate that. I think what I get from basketball is just this ultimate flexibility and more like fluidity. I guess you want to be able to really be able to take yourself. Things are changing all the time, and so how we respond and how you respond to that change, you really get a good sense of that there, because everything is just so fast paced. So you got to stay on, you got to keep going, and so you definitely get a sense of that from there. But from church, you get this ultimate desire for people, and so when you take that into the basketball world, I try to have relationships with the fans and stuff that are there, care about them. I did a fan's wedding right before the pandemic got started. It was in January or February. Drove down and officiated a wedding for one of the fans there who I developed a relationship, and they had asked me to be a part of it. So getting a chance to make take that what we're learning in the basketball world, just about team dynamic, flexibility, staying on top of things, doing things with excellence, bringing that here, but also taking love for people, the human aspect of it there. I really think both of those things contribute to make me the best version of myself that I can be and that I can bring to both of these organizations, for sure.
How has social media made a big difference, not just for sports or for celebrities, but in the local church? How can we use social media in a positive way?
Great question. Yeah, I think that what we see is that it really is a tool to bring people together. We've tried to make our online services as engaging as possible by encouraging people to talk, encouraging people to comment, encouraging conversation, just because it helps, even if just for a moment, helps us feel like we're all together. And we've used social media in a lot of ways. We like to think about ours and a lot of what we do from the church perspective, from the standpoint of we're trying to what we want to do is we want to connect people to the stuff that's already going on. We want to connect people to things that are already happening that are great. So a lot of our social media content and posts aren't about something that we did that we think was great. We're trying to drive people back to, hey, there's this great organization in town that's going to support teachers next school year with school supplies. Let's try to as a church drive school supplies so that we can donate them to this organization that's already going to be placing those where they're most needed. Or we've got a great organization here in our county called the Sharing Center that does a ton of food and meal distribution. So we're saying, we could, work really hard to start our own food distribution and meal program, but we'd rather support the one that's already
Yeah.
here and already doing that. So that's what a lot of our social media is, not just like celebrating us and what we do. I mean, we certainly have some of that in our own self promotion, but we're also trying to, celebrate what's going on around us, all the things that are already happening, the things that are great, and the things that our community can support on together in their groups and their families on their own. we want to try to drive up and support those things around us. We want to try to be the ultimate cheerleader. We want to be, a great community member and team member as far as making a difference here in our, and where we're at. That's what our social media is about for us, our strategy.
Yeah, I think that's wonderful. That's a great reminder for all of us that are in vocational ministry. Hey, so being a part of the Lakeland Magic, the 2021 G League champion Lakeland Magic, when you announce players, has there ever been a time where you look at the stat sheet or the description, then you look up at the player and it says they're 6'7", but they're only 6'3", or it says like they're 190 pounds and you're like, no way, you're pushing like 250. How do you not laugh, or is that just part of the gig of saying the height and weight that's written down, that's what you talk about?
Listen, these guys, they somewhere along the line, they're all fudging some number, and especially those things. Basketball players especially are very conscious about their height, so they want to try to get every little bit out of their height, and some of those you see. And it just makes you laugh. But there's a guy who played on Lakeland this year, Andrew Rousey, who listed as like 5'10" or 5'11", and absolutely is. He completely owns it. So got to give him credit where it's due. He absolutely just takes his height and just owns it.
Hank, as we wrap up, Hank Taylor, Lakeland Magic, also the foundryseed.org. You can find more information about him there. But if you were speaking to a young kid, 14, 15 years old, that they look at you, they look up to you, and they say, man, I want to get started, what advice would you give?
If you're trying to get started into announcing, I guess is where I would there are a couple ways you could go. But if you're going to get started into announcing, you just got to start to start to network. You got to look at the people who are in those spots where you want to go. And even if it's just, send a message, interact with them on social media somehow, start to try to get familiar with those guys and make a connection, form a relationship. That's going to be how that goes. You also got to watch a ton of find the voices out there that you really like, figure out what about those that you like, and start to sort of emulate that, bring that into your own style. And you can't, there's no situation that you can or should say no to. You need to try to take advantage of every opportunity. There will always be a chance to sort of put that skill into practice, even if it's just your little brother's little league baseball team. They never had an announcer before, and you just want to try to do that to practice and get started. I mean, you got to really try to take advantage of all those opportunities, every chance that you get. To do that sort of thing. But you also have to worry about, being a good teammate. You want to try to be out there and carry yourself in a professional way. And you want to be a good team player. You don't want to be the guy that's showboating and, puts other, isolates themselves from everybody else and makes it about them and puts people down. Like, even announcing is really a form of service. I mean, You're celebrating those athletes, telling their stories. You're amplifying, what it is that they're doing, what's happening. So if you try to make it all about yourself, you're not gonna tell the best. You're not going to show the best version of yourself. So you want to always be, willing and to do whatever. Always asking, what is the next thing I can do? How can I continue to serve? How can I continue to help? Because those are the people that people remember and that will refer you, to the next thing. Nobody wants to refer the guy that was a jerk or refer the guy that was mean. Even if maybe the talent isn't quite there, I would much rather, I know my jobs, I would much rather work with the person that's, friendly and nice than the person who was a jerk. So that's always something you got to keep in mind.
Yeah, a book I really enjoyed. It was called The Hero Maker. I think it's by Warren Bird and Dave Ferguson, but just a title that got me with everybody wants to be the hero, but I think we need to be hero makers. When I was on radio a few years ago, several years ago now, my boss said, Jeff, you're reading the sports report and that's fine, but to get better, read to your kids out loud. So I use that as a hack for me, just with tone, pace, cadence, all of that. What has been something that's helped you, maybe a little hack as far as getting better at your craft to improve doing what you do?
Always, turning off, the sound on TV and, commentating along and doing it yourself. I've always enjoyed that for the little bit of commentary that I do. But I think before public address, I think one of the best things is sort of what you just said, just finding opportunities to speak aloud, especially reading aloud. I think is a skill, because most of what I do from an announcing perspective, you're reading something that's been prepared, obviously. So just being able to read out loud, find your natural cadence, find your flow, find, where you're comfortable, and just really start to hone that in, so that when you get behind the mic and you're in that live environment, you know how your voice carries, how your voice sounds, the inflections that are good, the sounds that are good, and you can take all that and put out a great product.
Well, Hank, thanks again for making so much time and being a part of the
Course.
podcast, the YouTube channel, on Instagram and on Twitter. Again, it is Tank. Well, on Twitter, it's Tank_Haler, and on Instagram, it's @TankHaler. So the final question I have for you is simply this: when the feature film is made about the 2021 Lakeland Magic G League Championship team, who plays you in that feature film?
Me. I want to play myself. Put me in. I'm there. I want to be there. But if I have to pick somebody, let's see. I mean, Tom Cruise. Tom
There
Cruise
you
would be
go.
cool.
There
That'd
you
be
go.
fun.
That sounds good. But Hank, we
Yeah.
wish you all the best, and thanks again for making the time. I'll have to get you back on the church pod, and we could dive in to a little bit more of what you're doing with connections and digital ministry. And I think it's an important topic that we all can learn from. And I think it's just so important to learn from
Absolutely.
each other. So thanks
Absolutely.
again for making the
course.
time. Hank, we wish you all the best. We'll talk to you soon. And that's Hank Taylor. Again, you can find him on Instagram @TankHaler and also on Twitter @Tank_Haler. The Lakeland Magic, the NBA G League champions this year, and a lot of fun to meet different people. And for me, I love sports, but I love stories. So make sure you listen to some and you learn from all. We'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, everybody.